Welcome. Can you guys see my screen? I am pretty much where you are. So a lot of this stuff for me is topical, interesting, and relevant to my life as well as to yours. I went to undergrad at William & Mary, so my reunion will be coming up in 4 years there. But I've been here since 1974, so a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about today will be stuff that I know about, right, personally. And I thought what I would do here is talk both about the larger trends in social, cultural, political history during this really fascinating time period, really half a decade, right? Basically 65 to 70, and tie that into stuff that goes on here at the University of Florida. And you know, many of the things that I talk about at UF, you may know about, you may not know about, or you probably will know more about than I did and wish you didn't because you don't want to remember that stuff. But we'll move on from there. So if you've got questions, save them for the chat at the end. I'll be happy to talk to you later. If I've got mistakes in here, if I got a picture of somebody and I say it's Steve Spurrier and actually it's Tim Tebow, let me know, okay? So I'll be happy to help you here. Okay, so this is the alligator, I think, on the first day that you guys came to college in 1966. And one of the nice things about UF is they've got a significant portion of online digital archives with alligator and the Seminole, which interesting is the yearbook, in case you forgot that. So it's easy. So if you want to look through alligators, if you want to look through the yearbook, they're all online. And I think that's a wonderful way to do this. And it may kind of, you might have already done this, but this is welcome UF. Here you are, your first day at the University of Florida. And UF's getting a new law center, trade with Alabama. I don't know what that means, but sports is important. So here we are. And while we're here, we see rather broad changes in the world at large, represented by television. Okay, so let me just go to full screen here. Okay, so 1965, best shows in television, highest rated were Gunsmoke and Bonanza, that old school Western stuff, right? Which are dying by the mid-60s, which by late 1960s are almost dead, replaced by kind of funky, funny, irreverent shows like Rowan Martin's Laugh-In, which is the #1 show by 1969. So during the time that you're in college, things change dramatically on television. And they change dramatically with television too. We've got black and white TVs being replaced by big screen, big box colored televisions. And I can remember in 1966, the first Super Bowl, which we'll talk about in a minute in here, I demanded from my parents that we go to my grandparents' house to watch the Super Bowl because they had a colored television, right? And so, oh my God, it was just so exciting to see the first Super Bowl in color. And I also remember Christmas 1970, first time coming home from college, went to William & Mary, I'm there, I come back, and there in our house for the first time is a colored television set. It's like the world had changed dramatically. Okay, so this is part of the time period that you are here at UF. And while we're here, we get our news from basically two places. ABC News is there, but it really doesn't exist. So we get our news from Uncle Walter, and that's the way it was, September 17th, 1968. And good night, David. Good night, Chet. David Brinkley, Chet Huntley. So, these guys, and you can see, very interesting. We get the cigarette ashtray in front. That's another sign of the times. We had a phone that my children have no idea what is, not even a push button phone, a rotary phone, hence the term dialing, right? So, these are the guys that we get our information from. And at some level, they shape the way the world is because that's all we see. We see it from newspapers, but we also see it from here, right? And when we talk about Vietnam, Vietnam is the television war because during our dinner hour, it comes to us through the television. It comes to us filtered by Walter Cronkite and Huntley and Brinkley. Right? And, commercials, advertising, very different, okay? Cigarette, that's sexist to the max, and just Virginia Slims, if you're a new new age woman, a woman who's with it, right? You're going to be smoking cigarettes and wearing a miniskirt. This stuff is just remarkable when you see it, and you just shake your head and say, really? That L&M commercial is, L&M advertisement is just hysterical. And while we see this, we also see, Ronald Reagan, governor of California in the late 60s, also hawking Chesterfield cigarettes, Chesterfield for Christmas. So, at some point, you can go home and you don't know what to give your dad for Christmas. Well, you give him a package of Chesterfield. So just, the amazing difference between the world then and now regarding those little things is rather fascinating, right? So, Bev, and movies as well are very different. 1965, and one of the best movies out is Dr. Zhivago, this epic movie in which we see the good guys succeed over the bad guys. This big screen epic of large crowds and horseback and everything else. By 1967, we see something very different. We see bad guys as heroes. We see bank robbers as the good guys, right? We see them as and lots of blood. Dr. Zhivago is this epic in which lots of people get killed, but not much blood, right? Bonnie and Clyde, we see slow motion of people being machine gunned by these two guys, okay? And of course, we all know why that's important. This movie's important because Faye Dunaway is also a Gator graduate. So, we have to have her in here as well. So movies, just like TV, represent this shift in the way the world looks at itself. And Broadway too, this is 1963, a little early, but this is The Sound of Music, right? This kind of traditional Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, with old style songs and very, very staid acting and everything else. By 1968, we've got the tribal rock musical Hair, with nudity on the stage, with hair representing something that, my students at UF now don't understand at all. That hair was a political statement. If you had long hair in 1968, you were making a statement that you were not part of, quote, the establishment. And this play represents that. I saw it on Broadway when I was in college. I actually saw it at the Hippodrome when I was here in Gainesville. So, it's become interesting. It's become a staple of the canon of Broadway shows just as much as The Sound of Music. Whereas when it was on Broadway, it was like, oh my God, this stuff's crazy. So, interesting. So, the Super Bowl too. This is a picture of Super Bowl I, 1966, in the LA Coliseum. And you can see it's not a big deal, right? You can see the fans in the stands. And my wife took a look at this, who, by the way, is a double Gator as well, undergraduate and master's, class of 77. And she looked at this and she said, it looks like they're playing us in front of COVID, social distancing. So this is not a big deal at all, right? It's that first one, is it gonna make it? Is it gonna be exciting? Are people gonna watch? By the time you graduate, it has become part of America's cultural landscape to become basically America's secular holiday today. And at some level, that's because of Super Bowl III, which takes place when you guys are in college. The New York Jets, bright, brash, long-haired Joe Namath beats the staid Baltimore Colts, right? Jets win 16-7. And, here's Namath being interviewed before the game in Miami, something that wouldn't happen again. And the crazy thing is, people are giving him grief because his hair's long. Look at his hair. Maybe his sideburns are long, but his hair is not long at all. So this represents kind of the changing scene of how the Super Bowl comes onto the American scene and becomes the icon that it is today. So while all this is going on, certainly the backdrop of this is the Vietnam War. Okay, these are 1966 pictures. America has about 125,000 at the beginning of the year, almost 200,000 at the end of the year as the war is ramping up. And, for college students, it's in the background of their lives. Certainly notions of what your draft status is, 1S, right? If you're a male, which is, one student, you probably can't get drafted like that. And your job is to stay in college, because if you flunk out of college, guess what? You're going. Okay, you're going to Vietnam. So this is on the back burner. And then that switches to that, today when people think about the lottery, it's you can win money. When we think about the lottery, it's that draft lottery when your number comes up. And I can still remember mine, 286. I'm a very happy guy because I wasn't going because my number was high. So Vietnam in that background all the time as people begin to question whether we should be there, whether we should increase our support of the troops there, whether we should bomb the North further. So that's kind of in the background. So while all this is going on, certainly we see University of Florida. And the next two pictures are this remarkable set of images actually produced by a person who works at UF, whose son was in my Florida history class. And he said, my mom's got these pictures of UF. Would you like to see them? And I said, yeah, and it's fantastic. So this is the Wrights Union, black and white picture of young women, basically from your time frame, right? With the Wrights in the back. Wrights hadn't changed much from this point of view because this is before it was really fixed up. So that's kind of an amazing picture of what the Wrights look like and what people look like with the flip hair going and the heavy dresses and everything else, right? And we've got that. And then we've got this. This is the president's house. And again, when this picture was taken, both of them, this was the president's house. Now the president's house is out there by the law school, right? And the president's house is basically a UF conference house, a place where people can go for entertainment. And you can see how much it didn't change from that front picture to that back picture in this time period. Okay, so, as this is happening, we learn about what's going on at UF through the yearbook, something that doesn't exist anymore. And bizarrely enough, the yearbook from the University of Florida was called the Seminole, which just makes no sense at all to me. I don't understand why that is, but this is a picture of the Seminole taken in kind of the courtyard by Library East, by Bryant Hall there, by Matherly Hall, all of which were there when you were there. And people dressed like they were in 1966. The young woman there, the guy in the suit, the tight pants, everybody in collared shirts. And this picture too, this is on the this is outside by the library there. You can see everybody kind of dressed nicely and neatly, kind of short hair. This is all from the 66. This is all from the 66 yearbook, right? So an interesting picture. My mother said, I'm sorry, my wife said, no women. Yeah, there are women here. You can see, a lot of girls here, a lot of young women. No African Americans at all, right? So, UF still almost exclusively a white institution. We'll talk about that as we travel through. More pictures from the yearbook, Gator band stuff. And again, that picture and the marching F, not much different than stuff that happens today. The picture on the left, that's the Alligator staff, the paid staff, which they don't have anymore. And again, the thing that why I wanted to put this picture in here is that, here's a guy just smoking a cigarette and it's just business as usual. Okay, I take my picture, I've got a cigarette, so what? Everybody's smoking. And that stuff is so different from today. And all the people in the newsman wearing those ties, having those collared shirts, again, very different from today. And you can see in that bottom picture, the two women, they're getting ready to paste stuff up on the paste boards, which now is just something that you just see in movies, right? Because everything is done digitally. And President Wright, this is his last year or close to his last year in office. Okay, he leaves in 68, I think. But Wright's, this represents the old guard. Wright's is there from the 50s onward into the 60s. And Wright's older guy represents the old school of Florida. And it was in there for the whole Johns Committee investigation. And he will be replaced by a younger man from a new generation who won't look like your grandfather, right? So this is the person that the union will be named after. This is the person who was president when you started at UF. Okay, this is what the campus looked like in 1966. There's the football stadium. The road in the front here, this is University Avenue, okay? And all this stuff back here is now houses. And this open area, I think this is what was J.J. Finley Elementary, which is now Carolyn Parker Elementary, renamed after a black woman from Gainesville who was a physicist. Name was taken away this year because J.J. Finley was a Confederate general. But you can see the campus looks very, very, very different than it does today. All these courts are gone. This, however, that's the Florida gym. That's still there. Okay, so interesting shot. And of course, it's a football weekend, so it's full of about 30,000 to 40,000 people. Okay. And if we talk about football, we want to talk about Gatorade. And certainly Gatorade developed in 1965 by Dr. Cade, who's pointing in the middle. And we talk about Florida and football in the 1960s. We talk about Gatorade in that iconic Stokely Van Camp glass jar, right? And all of you have had Gatorade from that, I know, because I have. But this is what makes Florida unique. Named after the University of Florida, gives those football players, all white, I might add at this point, gives those football players a lift on the field. As we all know how hot it can be on Florida Field, not yet Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, but Florida Field in the 1960s. And if we talk about Florida football in the 1960s, we see the Heisman Trophy winner, 1966, Steve Spurrier, Heisman Trophy winner, the game against Miami that first year, an amazing story, an amazing representative of the University of Florida. He's still associated with UF. And when you talk about Florida football in the 1960s, you mention Steve Spurrier. That's all you need to mention. And there he is with his Heisman Trophy, okay? And you can see his hair, and I think this is important, okay? So Spurrier graduates, goes on to end up in the NFL playing for the 49ers, and then, oh my God, for the Bucks when they're terrible, right? And leads on to this amazing career as coach at Duke and UF, and not so good with the Washington Redskins, and he's here. So we can see him. After he leaves, it appears things are going to go downhill, and we're not sure what's going to happen. But basketball intervenes. This is basketball team 67, 68, Coach Tommy Bartlett. And again, you can see they're all white then, right? They're all white. So this is an institution in which that is the case. So as Spurrier leaves, what's going to happen with the football team? Well, we get a new breed of more splashy, more exciting at some level, John Reeves and Carlos Alvarez, who come here in 1969, unexpectedly do incredibly well. John Reeves, now the late John Reeves, Carlos Alvarez becomes an important member and a person in Florida politics and business. So they bring back Florida football, to a place where we didn't think it was going to be after Spurrier left. And you can see, maybe, you can see the difference. 3 years. There's Reeves and Alvarez, hair over their ears, long sideburns, looking like they are rebels, So very interesting differentiation between them and Spurrier, okay? So we also see a change. The first African-American football players come to the University of Florida. Leonard George from Sarasota, Willie Jackson from Gainesville, and they changed the composition of the football team slowly, but also of the campus, okay? And I think it's really important to understand how difficult a time it was for them in an institution that is 98% white and where they are expected to perform on the field. And the assumption is they're here only because they're football players, and alumni are not necessarily happy with them there. The fact that they survived and graduated and made lives for themselves talks about the support they had maybe from coaches, but about themselves as human beings. So we need to honor these guys for what they did during this time period. And then there's this, and this is, change in the cultural milieu, Playboy. I mean, I would bet that every guy here had one in his dorm room, right? Looking at the women, student power, right? But this also at some level ties to what's going on at UF. As UF women, on the left-hand side, it's UF. On the right-hand side, it's National. Protest against sexism early on. The women are equal in power, equal pay for equal jobs. We talk about rape culture way back then, right? But on the left-hand side, can make up, cover the wounds of our oppression. That is UF student Carol Giardina marching at the Miss America, protesting at the Miss America parade, a Miss America pageant in 1968, right? Carol Giardina gets her Ph.D. At UF in history. She's my TA, and she's now teaching at Queens College, writing about women's liberation and talking about how important Gainesville is in the fight for women's liberation, something that's really not well known, but certainly incredibly important during the time that you were there, that the statement The personal is political, which becomes the major focus of women's rights during this time period, comes out of Gainesville. So Carol is a really important figure. And then there's Pam Brewer. When we talk about Playboy and we talk about the alligator and we talk about women in Florida, Pam Brewer is this person. Pam Brewer poses nude in an alternative magazine called The Charlatan on campus. Some of you may have seen it. And boy, she gets in deep doo-doo for doing that. She is placed on academic probation. You can see Brewer hearing set today. Pam Brewer, no stranger to drama. And if you remember head shops coming into Gainesville, the Subterranean Circus, maybe the first head shop in Gainesville, they're selling beads and clips and all sorts of paraphernalia. Pam Brewer is one of the first owners of that store, okay? And, here we go, the juxtaposition. Wright's decision, expected to act on FDC decision. That's Faculty Discipline Council. They're going to discipline Pam Brewer for doing that, for posing naked. Didn't have parents' permission, okay? And, juxtapose that with the other thing on the front page of the Alligator. For Valentine's Day, which is really interesting, Miss UF contest on television. So here we have Pam Brewer and we got Miss UF. So interesting stuff. All right. And also, again, the juxtaposition of UF students participating in national events. All right. These are UF students protesting against segregation and inability to serve African Americans at the College Inn, which is right across from the university's campus on University Avenue. Okay. And today, that is the social at Midtown. Okay. And certainly juxtapose that UF picture to the picture on the right, which is nationally white women working together with black women to get blacks registered to vote. So UF is part of this, even though at this point there are very few, almost no blacks at UF, but there are still students helping them to try to achieve equality. All right, so let's see if we can move on. All right, sorry. Okay, so while we're looking at this, right, and black activism changes in the late 1960s during the time period here from nonviolent confrontation to this, okay? This is Cornell 1968 as African American students take over the student union armed, okay? Armed. And, the juxtaposition of armed students with long rifles looking ready for war with the welcome parents sign tells us how different things are now than they were earlier in the decade, right? And tied in with that, strikes. This is the Memphis garbage men or sanitation strike in 1968 with the iconic I am a man symbol, the picture on the left, all the signs, the picture on the right telling us, that's what America's like in 1968. Armed National Guardsmen, bayonets at the ready, African-American sanitation workers just demanding to be paid a living wage, having to be kept away by armed soldiers in the street. Some level reminds us of what's happened this past summer. This ties in, certainly, 1969, credit coming for UF Black Studies. UF slowly being dragged into the modern age, basically because of the actions of people like this and UF students like that, okay? So, going to be an African Black Studies program. We all know where the BSU is, and the Institute for Black Culture on University Avenue. If you're on campus now, which we can't because of the COVID, you can go see the new building that is there that is really nice for African American students to have their own space on campus called the Institute for Black Culture. But that gets its start right here when you were at UF. And we all know this picture, and we probably all know where we were when this happened. April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King assassinated, right? That positive era of the civil rights movement gone. Streets aflame, riots break out, the world looking like it's coming to an end with the assassination of King in that month, okay? That year too, 1968 is just a hell of a horrible year. January 1968, the Tet Offensive, in which we're doing great in Vietnam, ready to win. The Tet Offensive shows us that we're not ready to win as North Vietnamese troops and Viet Cong guerrillas basically even enter Saigon, fight on the grounds of the U.S. Embassy. And the picture on the left, we've all seen that. That is a South Vietnamese military officer executing a suspected Viet Cong guerrilla, and the person doing the shooting is supposedly on our side. This picture really lets us understand what the heck the war is about, and maybe we shouldn't be there. And when Walter Cronkite goes to Vietnam at this point, he says, maybe we shouldn't be here. We all know, we all listen to Walter, right? June 1968, another horrible event. Bobby Kennedy wins the California primary. This is just 20 minutes before he is assassinated at the hotel, at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, again, putting the nation into a horrible position. So we've had the Tet Offensive, we've had King's assassination, we've had Bobby Kennedy's assassination, and then we have another riot at the Democratic Convention in August 1968, in which armed National Guardsmen and Chicago policemen beat unmercifully demonstrators in the streets. Again, remarkably similar to the things that are happening, and you can see the old guard changing. This is Mayor Daley and his supporters on the floor of the Democratic Convention, saying words that cannot be repeated here about demonstrators and about Abraham Ribicoff, Democratic senator from Connecticut, calling him all sorts of anti-Semitic slurs. So the world is coming apart in 1968. You know, this is Vietnam. Looks horrible, right? You know, we got soldiers waving the peace sign. Now we got many more. We got 500,000 soldiers in Vietnam. And maybe Johnson has put a pause on the bombing, but things look terrible, right? Things look awful. And you guys are right in the middle of college at this point. And then in November, Richard Nixon wins, okay? Razor thin margin. Richard Nixon pleads for reunited nation, but not necessarily, okay? Because we've got this great picture that may symbolize positive things. This is Apollo 8. This is Earthrise, Christmas 1968, taken from the Apollo ship, which doesn't land on the moon, which is circling the moon, takes this picture of what looks like an incredibly fragile Earth, right? An Earth that needs us. And this picture represents maybe hope, and hope for the next year, 1969, right? Okay, that kind of taken in that same roll of film, if we all know what film is, by the astronauts, right? 1969, another crazy year. This is Nixon takes the oath amid war protest, really kind of belying that myth of united stuff. And, you know, we got to think there, accent actually had really interesting and important people when you guys were there. When I was an undergrad, when I was a graduate student, accent. Now accent has like entertainers, you know, because students don't want to go see provocative people. But the best part about this thing is this Nixon unflushed. I don't know if you can see it. Supposedly when Nixon was going to, the moment he was going to take the oath of office, people were going to flush their toilets in protest of Richard Nixon being the president of the United States. And at that same moment, I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, toilets malfunction at the Wright's Union. So this is just a great story here. And then of course we got flag burning, trial date moved back. You know, America's in crisis while you guys are growing your hair, right? But in the middle of all this, we take a moment just to recognize and to celebrate America's technological achievement. The moon, right? Launched out of Florida. These three guys go to the moon with that great picture. There's Neil Armstrong, right, on the moon's surface. So this is positive. This is amazing. Who would have thought when you were in elementary school that we would have landed on the moon, right? By the end of the decade, right? So we're there. And then who would have thought this? You know, 3 days of peace and music, Woodstock. I don't know if anybody was there. I was a senior in high school, going into senior in high school, you know, 500,000 people in upstate New York, right? Listening to Jimi Hendrix play the Star-Spangled Banner. You know, again, who would have thought that this would have happened, right? Look at, and you can see the differentiation in hair from 1966 to 1969, right? And if you think landing on the moon is crazy, if you think Woodstock is crazy, nothing is crazier than this. To tell you the world has turned completely upside down, the New York Mets win the World Series, right? And, you know, sad thing, Tom Seaver, New York Mets pitcher, being hugged in that picture there, now dead just this year, COVID related. the black third baseman there, Ed Charles, he's dead too, a native of Daytona Beach. Really wanted to play college ball, but couldn't play college ball at the University of Florida because he was an African American. So the Mets story is interesting and important. Also, another great thing, 1969, Sesame Street, okay? So it seems to be such a part of our lives, we didn't realize it started when you guys were in college, all right? So, and, 1969 ends with Florida basketball. Again, Earl Finley playing here, and we can see, once again, all white team, okay? Next year, 1970, you're graduating, right? You're graduating. Earth Day, and you can see that's just a great picture of Earth Day, thousands of people, that great poster. This is Earth Day at the University of Florida. Okay, you can see the hair, even different than the protest pictures. And again, we've got the alligator, environment top subject for Accent 70, representing all that stuff. But we've got the beauty salon advertisement on the page, just wonderful stuff. And then something I'm sure you all remember, May 4th, 1970, okay? Kent State, anti-war protest, 4 people dead, that iconic photo. Campuses across the nation explode, including the University of Florida. Kent State and Jackson State, where African-American students are killed on a black-owned HBCU in Mississippi, okay? Not nearly as well known as Kent State. This is UF campus, okay? And I don't know if anybody recognizes who this man is. That's Father Michael Gannon, who is the man I think most responsible for making sure that UF's campus remains relatively calm during these days of rage when people are angered about what happened at Kent State and expressing those feelings in the street. Gannon ends up being a professor of history, ends up being one of my mentors at UF, and he just died 2 years ago. I had the privilege of speaking at his memorial service. And now his papers are at UF, and his story is kind of the story of UF in the last quarter of the 20th century. Okay, let's see if I can move this along. Of course, okay, so again, demonstrations. U.S. imperialism out of Southeast Asia. You can see this is the UF campus, all right? And interesting, we have a black person there, but you can see once again the difference in what people look like. And UF explodes just like everywhere else in life. What happened at Kent State. So we're going to kind of end here. This is the yearbook from 1969. Look at how different it is from the yearbook that we started with in 1966. First of all, it's in color, okay, but we've got War is Hell, we've got this stuff, and the next page from the yearbook is rather remarkable, okay. Stephen C. O'Connell, his inaugural year there, okay, a new generation, but let's take a look and just look at this kind of defines things in a very negative way, which I don't want to focus on, but in this school I always work toward, which is we all work to UF, right? I work beyond myself into my own life, yet out of fear I kept small luggage by the door, taking leave bit by bit in letters from home and yet unrealized dreams, okay? The girl next door cries a lot and gets sick in the morning. Somehow there should have been something safer, something leaving kinder than this. That kind of explains kind of the angst that people had during that time. And I don't want to dwell on that, but it was a scary time. And people say, oh my God, it's so horrible, COVID, oh, it's awful. Yes, it is, but understand there was some serious issues going on there. So we're gonna end with this. Goodbye, seniors, and welcome back to the Grand Guard. We've got some UF icons there from the 60s all the way to today. And again, we'll end with the alligator. Interesting stuff. Charges against blacks dropped by committee. Autopsy requested in UF co-ed's death. I mean, really kind of interesting stuff. This is from February 1970, the last semester. I don't know if you guys were on quarters or semester. I know when I was in grad school here in 1974, we were on quarters. I don't know what you guys were on then, but so that's it. That's 4 years in the life of UF and the nation. So thank you. And questions or anything else? Oh, you guys are on quarters. Okay. So this was in winter quarter. Okay. This is on winter quarter. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop. And I guess I'm going to take off the I'm going to take off the share and see if anybody has any questions. And if they thought this was worthwhile, or if I was on target or what.
Yes, if anybody has questions, feel free to either submit them in chat, or if you would like to, you can submit your name and I will unmute you so that you can ask the question directly to Dr. Noll. Maybe a favorite memory. I know I have a couple of questions for alumni that weren't able to make it to the session that I wanted to make sure were asked. And it said, in your mind, Dr. Noll, what moments of history from the 1960s do you believe still heavily influence the world that we live in today?
Well, I think certainly for someone who was involved in athletics, both on the high school and college level, 1968 Mexico City, the Black Power salute, I think is remarkably tied into the issues of Black Lives Matter and, Colin Kaepernick and all that other kind of stuff. I think also the movement towards women's rights is profoundly important towards, as we see women demanding to be treated equally, demanding that men respect them for what they are. Those things, and certainly 1968, with King's assassination, with Bobby Kennedy's assassination, with the nightmare of the Democratic National Convention, and that election, once again, we talk about divided nations, that election in which Richard Nixon is using kind of the same strategy that Donald Trump is using today, kind of really speaks to things that I see as important. So, and I think certainly music, because when we were in college, both me and you guys, and we don't listen to our parents' music. Oh my God, that was just so, today, you mentioned the Beatles. Kids know the Beatles. You mentioned Woodstock. Kids know Woodstock. You mentioned Jimi Hendrix. So that kind of continuation of rock and roll and the musical legacy of the 60s, I think, is still there.
We have a question in the chat.
No, I did not. Mary, no, I did not. I did not talk about gay rights because there was only so much I could do. And certainly, while gay rights, I think, becomes much more important in the 70s, you remember that there was big groups of people, yes, but Stonewall is 19, and I should have put Stonewall in there, but there's only so much. So yeah, I think that ties in certainly with the movement for equality among African Americans, the movement among equality for women as well. So yeah, so thank you for pointing that out, Mary.
We had a question, how much has the student body grown over the last 50 years?
Well, right now we got 50,000 students, okay? I think when you guys were there, there was like less than 20, so significantly. Significantly.
There is a comment that referenced smoking and that students had the ability to smoke in class.
Yep. Well, when I was in college at William & Mary, students could smoke in dorms. You could smoke in the cafeteria. We had a pub. Now, was the Rat around when you guys were there?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The Rat's wonderful. The Rat's just a great place. And I didn't put the pictures of the Rat, but the Rat was, talk about music. The Rat is just this amazing place. But you could smoke there, sure. And you could smoke professors could smoke in their offices. I remember in maybe the late 80s when they banned smoking in offices. We had a tenured big time professor who said, I'm not stopping and you can't stop me from not stopping. And so he just smoked in his office, and after he retired, oh my God, they had to fumigate the damn thing, So again, interesting.
And there was one other reference that the Seminole was the yearbook that was named many years before Florida State became co-ed.
Right. Yes. Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I know that. Yes. But it's interesting that it remained that after FSU. That's yeah.
I know specifically I had a question for you, and I know your other passion area is within disabilities. What do you see as the main difference, both good and bad, of the evolution of disabilities and their place within society from the 1960s?
Well, certainly when you guys were there, and when I was at William & Mary, disabilities didn't exist, okay? There were no people with disabilities on campus, right? I think their visibility, their disabilities, their ability to be on campus, the activism that's allowed them to push for that, the support through the Disability Resource Center, the building of Cypress Hall as a universally designed, fully accessible dormitory for people with physical disabilities is profoundly important. Buses are, I think, well, there weren't many buses when we were here, right? Nobody knew. There weren't buses, and they went from no buses to buses, then they went from buses to buses that are handicap accessible. So I think that's really good. So I think visibility is profoundly important. I think that's important. And Larry Tyree, I had a Russian professor who changed smoke. I think that's Marvin Entner. Yep, I think that's Marvin Entner. Yep. It's just yep. Right in class. Yes, I know. Yes. So, and certainly that Gannon was a wonderful teacher. And, the thing that's best about Michael Gannon, besides his voluminous knowledge of everything, I mean, he writes on Spanish Florida in the 16th century. He writes on U-boats during World War II off of Florida, but his voice. And if you had Michael Gannon, it didn't matter what the hell he was talking about. And there's that great quote, Michael Gannon would have kept you spellbound if he was reading the phone book. And I tell that to my students, they have no idea what a damn phone book is. But I mean, that's how amazing his voice was, and again, thank you. If I keep doing this presentation, I will certainly attempt to put in stuff about gay rights activism at UF on this. And I'll throw in some pictures of the rat, because the rat's just remarkable. And I remember when the rat burned down, and I was here, and it was just one of the saddest days of my life. Oh my God, it was just terrible.
And Ron actually commented that he was in a couple of the pictures that were in your presentation.
Yeah.
So what pictures, Ron?
Yeah. Good job.
What pictures?
Well, let's see. One of those was Chicago. Well, it's not on campus. It's the Chicago Democratic National.
Oh, really?
I was an engineering student, so I wore a certain tie during the daytime, but at nighttime I let my hair down and go out and join the protests.
Excellent. Yeah, because you couldn't wear that in engineering class for sure. Great. Yeah, Beta Woods for sure, Larry. Yes. And the thing that I remember most, here, and it's a little after you guys, it's even after undergrad, was, the concerts that were here were remarkable, and free. I mean, I must have seen Jimmy Buffett 7 times at various locations around campus. North Lawn of the Wrights Union, right? In Florida gym. So all this stuff at Flavette, so it's a pretty amazing time. So anything else? Yes, Dr. Entner. Yep. Hopefully this brought back memories, and you guys, positive memories, or whatever. So glad that you're back wherever you are, because you're not back here. Maybe you are back here, but it's just a crazy time. But understand your time was crazy too, and older people were looking at during, saying, oh my God. So remarkable time. So
well,
we're halfway back, so we're not physically on campus, but if we're halfway back, halfway to the university, it means that we're half-wits, right?
Right, sure.
well,
anything that did you guys know Pam Brewer? Anybody know her? So is the history department still housed in Peabody? No. Okay, so I originally taught in Peabody when I first started, when I was in grad school in the 80s. Then when GPA was built, now known as Turlington Hall, we moved to Turlington, which is an atrocious building. And at some level, the scuttlebutt was Turlington was built the way it was to protect it from demonstrators, so it couldn't be attacked like buildings were that had big fronts like during the 1960s. So we moved to Turlington, and now we are located in Keene Flint, which is right on University Avenue, and was called Flint Hall, with the generous donation of the Keene family. They renovated the building, and in 2002, it was renovated, and we moved into there, which is great because it's an old building built in the first decade of the 20th century. And to have the history department in that is so much better than having that Turlington nonsense. So so we moved, but you know, to tell you the campus, so now Peabody houses obviously the dean of students, and I brought my son, he was like 8 at the time or something. I brought him in there to show him where my offices were in Peabody. Peabody was a dump by that time, and it was wonderful if you're a grad student. We had grad students who were living in the grad lounge there, and these people wouldn't let me see. No, you can't go in there. No, this is so my son. So just kind of typical. So.
Well, this has been a great way to start. I appreciate the history and bringing back.
Well, thank you guys. Hopefully this was helpful and enjoyable and positive. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Yeah.
Noll.
Thank you.
Walkman, yeah, water balloons for sure. That's, yeah. Okay, well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Good luck, go Gators, and enjoy your time. Carl Van Ness, who I was in grad school with, and who is at the library, will be talking as well later in the month, and kind of going over many of the same things. So thank you very much.
Yep, Dr. Noll actually finalized my comments to say thank you very much, everybody, for participating today. We hope you enjoyed your kickoff experience for Grand Guard. I know it's a little bit different than what we had initially hoped for this year, but we have future plans in the works, and we will communicate those when we finally have some details ironed out. But as Dr. Noll mentioned, on September 30th, Carl Van Ness, our very own UF historian, will actually be providing some details about what life was like specifically at the university during the 1960s and 70s. I think Dr. Noll touched a little bit on some UF stuff, but left a lot of what the UF student experience was like back in the 60s.
Yeah, I ran into Carl on a Sunday morning at Publix when we both were going because no one else was going to be there, and we talked about what we were going to say. So can I ask one person a question?
Sure, go right ahead.
Larry Tyree, do you know Doug Klepper?
Of course I know Doug Klepper, one of God's greatest creations.
Oh.
Doug Klepper was in graduate school with me. He's a double Gator too, and he is still teaching at Santa Fe, so getting ready to retire. But I will tell him that you said hello.
Please do, and again, thank you. This was just wonderful. The level of preparation that you went into and the presentation itself were just outstanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, ask my wife because now it's time for me to kind of rest and relax. And today was a rough day because I had 2 double periods today, online Zooming. My Florida history class was from 1:45 to 1:55 to like 3:30, so just before this, and then I had my disability class in the morning, so I'm a little worn out, but yeah, so my wife said now you can actually breathe. So thank you guys. This makes it all worthwhile for me to have you guys respond and enjoy this, so thank you.
Thank you very much. And everybody take care, and we will see you on September 30th with Carl Van Ness, who's actually joined us today. So feel free to go on the website and register individually for each of the events, and we look forward to seeing you at a future event.
And Carl and I do always meet at Publix, and you know, to get the whole Gator thing, our daughters were in the same Girl Scout troop, which my wife was the Girl Scout leader for. So our relationship goes back a long way. So and Carl will have lots of interesting stuff too. So thank you. Look forward to that. And I may zoom in for that as well. So thank you.
You're more than welcome to. Thank you guys.
Take care. Good night. Go Gators.
Go Gators. Yeah, go Gators. Thank you.